Okay, I'm gonna get started here, and we'll see. The ads are running, but that's okay. Okay. I made absolutely zero overall progress yesterday on this because I was a bit busy. So we will see where this takes us. Okay. So yesterday, I realized that there's an issue with just the way I approach um, these problems. I think of them as very single tracked, and I keep forgetting the fact that a tenant is required to associate this data with. So I really do need to make sure that I'm paying attention. So a project. Hi, Connie. How are you doing? Dogs are going to be a pain in the butt today. A project has to be associated with a tenant. There's no two ways about it, right? So I need a tenant ID attached to the actual project itself. In the other entities, user and tenant user, address even, these are objects that I join via linking tables, but I'm not sure a project needs a linking table. Could be better, but yeah, I love the source code generators. Nice. I use the source code generators in here in the mediator sagas to try and link things together, and I found them. I thought they were awesome concept, but I found that the build process was a little bit lacking. So I think I'd like to revisit them at some point. So the idea here was this was I have these templates, and yeah, I replaced the labels. So I basically look for the so when I generate a saga, I say I received this event, and basically it builds a handler. It builds the saga handler for all those events, and then wires them up to the actual the event code. So this is kind of boilerplate, but I kind of need it to hook up so it wires the event to the saga and executes the saga properly. So that's how I use the source code generators. But what I found was I was struggling to get it to always build, so I got a lot of inconsistencies in when it would or wouldn't work. So I'm hoping that's something I can improve upon. But yeah, the imports. No, where are you? Yeah, it was. I enjoyed using it. I love this sort of stuff. Like it's definitely the sort of stuff I love doing. This is the template stuff. Yeah. So generate for the candidates and then loop through and build out the namespace and stuff, and then build the actual template. That's to get the resource contents. I'm trying to remember how I actually did the templating now. Scriben. That's the templating I use. Scriben. Yeah, sometimes. Yeah, I got wild inconsistency with whether the code had actually generated properly, and I got to a point where it wouldn't actually update. Everything, the generated code looked correctly, but it wouldn't compile it in, like it was completely missing. So, yeah. No, I've got to learn more about these. So, um, I was looking at another. I was looking at a Mediator, how Mediator does it. That's how I was basing it upon. I figured if it's good enough for them, then yeah. So, but yeah, that's the sagas. Oh, exits everything, not close project. Oh well. Yeah. So it was just like a necessity, and I kind of went through it and didn't research all the options, and because I know there's many different ways of achieving it, which again is another issue for me with Microsoft is like they kind of go with one route and then all of a sudden switch and will building an entire different library to do the same thing. Okay. Went through all that, and I need to do that. Container is already disposed. Okay. Okay, it's zoomed. So projects need to be associated with the tenant, right? So yeah, that's what I was doing yesterday. I was building the unit tests out to try and prove these things. So we need a tenant ID. Private. Yeah. Let's add our tenant ID. So our unit test should pass. Applying tenant management. Okay. So let's add these extra tests. So when project prefix exists for another tenant, my dog's becoming an escape artist. The dog, one of the dogs, found upstairs and loves going upstairs now and laying on the bed. It's his favorite game. And we normally kind of keep the room separated off so they have plenty of space to play and play with their toys and whatnot. And he's figured out the way of sneaking around them. So when the prefix is for another tenant, I'm going to terminate this validation passes. So again, all I'm testing here is the validator, right? I'm just making sure that the validation is going to pass. So I'm just trying to speed things up a little bit here in terms of progress. I'll be right back. Okay, that's that. Dogs. So what I want to do here is set up another tenant ID. And the reason I'm building this test out is to make sure that I am validating this case properly before I make any changes for it, right? So this will be the other, so tenant ID here will be other tenant ID, right? Again, I think the same project isn't going to be existing on multiple tenants. That's just not the case. So there's no need to create a linking table in this manner. The address, even the user, they're kind of data that is going to change, and if they change, address maybe, but yeah, the address could exist multiple times, but it's associated with the tenant. The address can change, but yeah, so maybe that needs not be that way. But this one for certain, it's going to be associated with the tenant. So this one is going to be this other tenant ID. So now when we try and what we want is this to happen, right? So we want to say, okay, well, when we call create project with the actual tenant ID, this should create because it's now valid, right? And we got false and we expected true. So we're not linking this, we're not limiting this by tenant, we're limiting it by the prefix, because the project by prefix spec only takes the prefix. So it only matters so the prefix across all tenants would matter here. So project for tenant by prefix spec. And let's take that, change a int tenant ID. And this is going to be p.tenant ID equals tenant ID and prefix equals prefix. So our validator here now needs to have our tenant ID, and that is going to be visible in our command. So we know that ooh, that's a challenging one. So we have a validation rule that is on a property, but I don't have any more information available. I don't have the command available to me here. Validation, multiple properties. Sorry. Okay, so it might actually provide us with the overall object. So must async. So X, Y, Z. There we go. So it does give us the command, it does give us the prefix, and it does give us the cancellation token. So now we can do in there command.tenant ID. Okay, that means that cleaner. So let's run these now. This should fail actually. Because we are not doing what? So it exists for the other tenant ID. Oh. I'm not mimicking the collection. So it's the right change. The validation change is correct. But this isn't that should return null. Right. In this case, I'm not testing the data. So the other tenant ID doesn't actually matter. So this test is useless because it's essentially the same as this, right? I'm just explicitly stating that this returns null when given, because I can't validate that collection. So this test is not, it's a necessary test that I should write. I just don't have the ability to write it and be accurate about it, right? Because I want to be explicit that this is, for this tenant, but I actually have no way of controlling that, right? So this test passes because I return something, right? To be complete, I should say this, right? But I have no way of actually validating that another tenant won't trigger that. Other than just setting up so it won't return data if asked for that tenant. Because I can't argue I can't get the constructor args from the... If I can validate the constructor args here, then I can actually say, okay, well, I passed in this tenant ID, right? And then I can set up the version without it, and then say, okay, well, if I actually do pass in the right tenant ID, then this one will return the tenant, the project. Otherwise, it'll return nothing, and then I can actually validate that. But so this is end substitute. Arg get constructor parameters. So the issue I have here is it's not... how do we set up arguments for constructor parameters? Below is an example use case. Yeah, but it won't give me that, right? Because so if I say is here, right, x goes to x, it doesn't know. That's the specification. That's not the arguments, right? So I don't have the arguments there. Oh. Hold on. ID. Does that work? This would return new. So, okay. This will still pass. I mean, it's a little bit more explicit. It does give me the visual of telling the story, right? That's the important part here. The test should document the behavior, right? So I'm saying, okay, well, if I pass it in with this and this, and the way of testing this would be to say, right, this should fail. See, that doesn't work. That should fail. This feels like it's a lesson I need to learn, right? Because the other option is to store the properties, right? So if I have the spec, right, I store these as actual properties here and match them. But then I'm changing my code for the test, and that's not right. So how do I do this? Ignoring or condition is valid email. Arg, any arg. I mean, arg.is. Arg.is. Right. See, that shouldn't pass at all, because that should return a project. But it's getting back null in the validator. Come on. Okay. So we have the other tenant ID and the prefix, and then we get back a null project, which is exactly as intended, exactly as expected. So the mock doesn't have. Whoa, I didn't mean to. That started really quick. The mock doesn't have. Let's see if it just overrides it. Let's move that up there. No. What am I looking for here? They're referentially not the same thing, so they're not going to be. The arg is going to compare. Yeah, it's going to compare on value, and that's going to be. They're going to be different because it's going to be the same. So it's all. What's happening is it's not matching any of these, right? So it's actually returning null by default, right? Even if I make this return something, it's not going to do anything. It's going to break. I need to either get value equality somehow, or kind of define this as being, which again is changing the code to match the testing. Um, um, so I need value equality on these objects. I can't. That's not a substitute. And that's validating that it happened. So that's validating that the call happened. And check args. Yeah, there's no. X dot. Seems like it should be. So the challenge I have is I need to say, okay, well, if you match this, but I need to match it on the value, not the reference. So if it passes something like this, match. Let's go to the AI and see what happens. Using and substitute. Can I match an argument? But I don't have the properties, so that's not available to me. Would they generate the same hash? Like if this is a project, No. Like, there's no... all I'm putting off here is I'm putting off the fight of changing the object for the test to validate the test. There is value here, and this is something that could get easily lost. So I want to make sure that I'm doing the right thing. So yes, I could get over this by just saying, okay, well, I accept that it's the truth, but then the test has no value. And if the test has no value, there's no point having the test. And then I'm unclear about why I'm doing it. So I want to get this figured out. So again, the problem is that the object that I'm getting here, right, is I construct it with these parameters, right? I need to validate that I called that. So this matches and says, okay, when I see that pattern, I'll actually return you this object. So the mock will be set up. But the problem is that this object here, this is the actual argument that's passed in here, this X here, right? It's going to do referential equality comparing those two things, and it's never going to be true, right? So I can never do that. It's just not going to work. Because it's always going to return null. Because it's not even this case, it's actually the fact that it doesn't match on anything. So I can't do referential equality. To get value equality, I have to override it anyway and implement and make these accessible. So I could make these public int tenant ID, public string prefix, right? Right, I can do that. And that will work. I could now test this, right? Because now I can do x.tenant ID equals other tenant ID. Right? So that will work. But now I've changed my code solely to match my unit tests. And that is bad. So if I want to, I can move forward with that. But I think it's a bad choice, and I think it's not a good pattern to set. And most of what I've focused on for the past several months has been making sure I set up cleaner, friendlier patterns that I can repeat over and over again. So essentially I want to do can I compare objects based on yeah. I get the pros and cons. Um, so that's another. Can you actually do that? Right? Can I actually understand? So I know I can reflect on the object type, but can I look at an instance and ask what values were you actually built with? Um, I think it's called the same thing. Using C# reflection, can I gather the arguments Hmm. So everything I'm seeing here says no. I can't compare them without exposing these properties, and that is not something I want to do. I think that's a really poor design choice as a pattern. The specification is kind of self-contained. I pass the things in, and it does its job, right? When I construct it, and I think that would be less than clean. Right. But then my unit test is not going to be accurate at all. It's going to be a lie. This unit test is now completely useless without this ability to filter based upon constructor. Um, so what do I do? So you can't reflect back over the properties of a constructor. Because what I could do is if I could say, hey, this object was constructed with these arguments, then I could actually just build a method that is basically a comparison and does that for me. And then extend this so it reads correctly, right? Another option would be to create a fake here. So rather than creating but I'd still have the same problem. Yeah, because I'm not storing them, so I don't have any I don't have any value equality there at all. Even if I create a factory for this, right? So even if I swap this out a little bit and say, okay, well, in the validator, instead of doing this, I kind of create some sort of spec factory dot fetch, right? It's not going to make a difference because I'm going to have to tell it what spec I want at some point. And there's no clean way of designing that factory that I can think of. Because then I can validate, okay, well, when I call it with these arguments, then I get this back, right? This is most perturbing. Because it feels like this is something that has to have been overcome or has to have an answer for it. I just need to understand what that pattern is, right? What that approach is. Using a substitute. What is the best practice for matching and only? Again, I'm gonna not find. I don't. I know what the problem is. I just don't know what the right way to search for this thing is, because it's like sorry. Like when I'm searching on a value, when the arguments are nice and clean, that's fine. No, that won't. That won't. That won't do anything. Yeah, that won't like that either. It's crashing. It's not actually. Cannot determine argument specifications to use. Please use specifications for all of arguments. Yeah. So it's not intercepting the match. It's not intercepting the match at all. That won't work because it's going to return the wrong thing. Yeah, right now I'm going to have to trust it. It's not a good thing to do. these tests are not. The integration test is the only way I'm going to validate this piece. So now I have another dilemma. How do I make that clear? Right. I would kind of use the naming of the test to say, hey, this should be expected for this tenant, but I haven't actually proved the failure case, which is not ideal. Oh well. Concerning create project, project create. It's basically when creating all I want to do here is just validate that I'm passing the tenant ID and everything's good, right? Sorry for the cough. I hope it doesn't come through the microphone. So here we need a private repository of project. That's that. And we need private create project. Handler is our subject in this case, right? And yeah, so here I'm not going to break down, like, I like this. I think this is a good pattern, the validator being distinct from the actual code, but the actual create project command and handler can sit together still. I don't have any challenges with that part. Right, so I want to say in the arrange, yeah, that'll do. Technically no need yet. Repository dot received dot add async arg dot is a project. Yeah. Ugh. First alternating conditional expression. Project prefix. Project name. ID. So we're validating that, and then subject handle new create project command. This is going to be tenant ID, project name, project prefix. And let's go, and that needs to be handled async. Let's get a way to. So make sure it fires properly. Project is created. Fact. Result is success. Result dot status is result status okay. So other statuses can be okay, success, I believe, and I want to make sure that I set it to okay. Let's go to handler, request handler. Actually, this should be an I command. I need to be specific. Mediator, I don't know if it actually specifies these. Handle is not async. It's, well, it's async, but it's not called async. And then solution token notebook. Handler, and then we need an iRepository project. Okay, so we can run these. They should fail. Wow, this is the quietest stream I've had in a long time. Must be on really boring stuff. Okay, so then we're going to create the project. Result. To be async. That needs to be await. That's interesting. That's fine. And there we go. Okay, so now we have the structure in place to create the project. And we have the structure in place to validate it. Sadly, there's no easy way of making sure that those are always attached, so I still have to make the effort of going through and actually getting the code wired up. So this story specifically, as a tenant administrator, I should be able to define a project. A project should have a name and a prefix. The prefix should be unique, and I do need to deal with permissions later. But we've got the wire up there for creating a project for a tenant. So let's create the table. We need a script for creating the table. And this will be new file 009 projects.sql. Let's go over to here. New table. Say apologies if you're behind an ad break, but I don't think anybody is. So this is going to be called projects, and our columns are going to be ID, int, not null, identity. We need a identifier, unique identifier. That's interesting that the ID settings have made this text big. And this is default expression is new ID. We have a tenant ID, which is an integer, not null. That also can't be null. We have a name. Hey, Deflux, how you doing? Welcome on in to my very quiet stream. How you doing, sir? Prefix embarker 4, not null. Date added. Streaming from a library. Might as well be. GTC date. Last updated. Date time. That is nullable. Get back here. Last date added. Last updated. Yep. Okay. Primary key. Index on tenant ID. Let's build the table. No, the last couple of days have been very weird. There's absolutely nobody in the stream. Canny was in earlier on, but I think Canny is also working / also dealing with support of his Twitch library most of the time. Generate DD out the clipboard. Let's go over here. Go to projects. So that's that. That's fine. Oh, that's fine. I know you're busy. I know you're busy online. I appreciate it. Good day, by the way. It's just one of those things when you get used to talking to people and then there's absolutely no one and you're back to the old school streaming of I'm just sat here waffling to myself. Have you tried getting an AI son to throw things at you? thank you. Captain Chica, thank you very much for the follow. Appreciate it. Joking aside, I have considered putting something in the stream like interactivity or things like that, and it's just I don't have the interest in doing it and setting it up, and it's just not something I find a great deal of entertainment from personally. So it's hard for me to engage with that because I don't like it has minimal amusement value for me. Fullbots, good morning. How you doing? Talking of interactivity, yeah, because I don't find it super entertaining. I can't build something, right? While I was talking about doing a community bot thing, nice. Yeah, I do need to spend import buys to have fun. I think. Well, the problem is who's making the things that bring you joy. Yeah. When I'm working on stuff like this, it's like this is not your lightweight fun stuff, unfortunately. Okay, so we have a table. We have a now we need to wire up the make sure the context has it. So we have a project. It has a tenant ID, a name, and a prefix, whichever way you would like to say it. We now go to our context, and we need to add the project in there. Now, I do still need to add a project configuration. And this will be similar to, yeah. So this is those common fields, right? So everything's entity wise is a base entity. Should meet my Amish friend up here. Really good at making tables. So we got the context configured. we've got the validator, we've got the project. The next step is to wire up an endpoint, and this would be projects, and this would be post. So in this case, for this one, when I'm posting a new user, I actually do have a validator here, the iValidator. So I think validation is something that comes on multiple levels, right? There's kind of like input validation and then data validation. And data validation can't happen here, but input validation happening here, making sure that the only way you get through to the next level is with good data as intended, right? So this validator here validates, okay, the name, there is an email, it is an email address, there is a password, and it matches the rules, right? So you can't actually just create a user. And then there's trust beyond there, right? The register new user has that. So, and we've kind of gone into this before in terms of validation. I now have the ability to add another layer of validation here, and that not necessarily here. So register new user requires multiple things, right? There's more to it than just that. So, but register user again could have validation on it, and this way I can't avoid. I still have validation. I still do have a validator here. So this gets attached and will execute before this calls. So it's still validating that there is definitely an email address. So even if I was to call this from behind the scenes, it's still got validation attached. And the password isn't handled here, right? The password is handled in this part, right? But this is, again, this is calling the provider, which in this case is Auth0. So, and again, I could still use validation there. So this rule specifically might make more sense further back, but at least I can validate this and actually throw from the API perspective. Okay, you have to meet some common rules here. So I could share these rules or whatever, pretty simply. So in this case, this post is not going to be. So this is going to require an I. Dualist, hello, how you doing? I sender, and it's what is this? How do I set it up? Endpoint, so we need post parameters, so we need public class parameters, string name, string prefix, Mr. Jones, afternoon. Almost weekend, absolutely. Endpoint. And then that is, what is that returning? That is returning results. Okay, bad request. Okay. Okay. Let's need public override configure, and that's posting to projects. Right now, I'm not going to apply the I need to revisit permissions and roles. So yesterday on stream we got we actually got roles included from Auth0 so that I don't duplicate. I don't duplicate the roles in my code back up to the to Auth0, and I don't have to maintain two lists then. Public execute. Yep. So create project is the command. So this requires user equals user dot I was looking at the wrong examples. That's going to trip me up time and time again. I need to work on that. Do I store? I do. So I have some wild inconsistency there in the way I'm structuring the tables. So planning items. When I create a planning item, so I store the tenant identifier on here. Right now, there's no concept of tenants. The tenanted data is just the GUID, and that allows me to filter it. I don't actually need to represent a tenant in here. So what I've been doing is where I've got this data where I don't specifically need, like here I'm storing the tenant. I couldn't store the tenant data, but I store the identifier here. So I would be linking back to the table on its identifier rather than its ID, which is not really ideal in this case. But I kind of set a pattern of, okay, well, if I don't actually need the tenant information in the ticket, which I don't actually need this now, right? The tenant, only from a validation perspective do I need to know that the tenant exists, right? So if I get a tenant record, then at least I know that that tenant is a valid tenant. So if I'm not just inserting data for invalid tenants, right? But the problem is, because of the eventual consistency, I have to insert this record anyway and trust it. So I can verify later, and at the very worst, you could create data. You could create bad data in the system if you could somehow understand all the information you've got to dump in there. In this specific case, I do have a tenants table because this is tenant management, right? So it seems natural to put the project attached to the tenant ID. But I don't have the tenant ID when I'm resolving an API request, right? I have the GUID because that's who the user's logged in as. So I've got two options in my create project command here. I can either resolve the tenant ID and proceed with this, or I can change the ticket, the project, to have the tenant identifier. It's not going to make much of a difference, right? But it is substantial enough to make sure that so in this particular system, it is absolutely impossible to get to create project without the tenant existing, right? I can't get here without that tenant record existing. So I know it is there. And when I'm querying this, when I'm querying projects, that isn't this isn't used for query. So if I want to resolve it, I've got to inject another repository. I've got to change all this. It's not difficult. It's just like from a design perspective, it's very inconsistent in how I'm dealing with this. So I've got to kind of, I know there's different situations, there's different reasons why the data's available, but I've got to make sure that I'm not just introducing fluff. And some of this was built on a different path, right? I wasn't initially going to go the whole view database perspective. That was kind of a nice to have later on, maybe down the line, and became quickly I'm going to do that. That sounds pretty cool, right? So, where are you? So yeah, I don't need any. I'm never going to look up this project again by its tenant ID. I only am associating the tenant identifier. So I think I'm answering my own question here. I don't need the ID. I just need the tenant the unique identifier on here. So this would be GUID. This would be GUID. We'll worry about the test in a second, right? Our script here is going to be a unique identifier. Our table here. Let's see if it lets me do this. There's no data in there, so it should. Easy to do it that way. Yeah, exactly. Okay. We still have an index on it. Because it doesn't really matter. This is kind of why I was talking yesterday about like the ownership of this data, right? So projects are created at the tenant level. They are they span each of these things. Each piece of the system is going to need to know about projects, right? Man, the design just keeps blowing up in my head. Like I think about one little thing, and I'm like, oh yeah, that might need to be handled somewhere. So the other day, I wrote this, right. I've started to try and put down my dev thoughts a little bit, and I was going through the explosion of ideas that comes when I want to do something simple. So I got to like the notifications aspect, and I've kind of gone through this anyway, but I went through the notifications aspect, and just thinking about that kind of blew up the scope of what I need to do, right? All the pieces I need to be able to achieve the notifications, and they are a fundamental component of what I'm trying to build, which means I cannot avoid them. They're not something I can defer until post MVP, because they are MVP, right? So, but doing that analysis, sitting there thinking about what I actually need, really kind of expanded the scope of what I'm building, right? Quite substantially in terms of effort and whatnot. So I decided that, okay, I need projects. Projects is a must, right? I need to be able to filter, right? Because I need to be able to filter planning items by the project they're associated with. I need to associate them with a project, because that's what matters the most, right? Because, again, organization of this. Some basic search is a must-have, because, again, discoverability is something that I want to focus on. But then what I was just thinking about then when I paused was, well, I'm going to have a unique index. But where do I store a unique index in this system? How do I get a unique index? I now need to consider, and I don't need it for this piece right now because project is project, right? But now I need something to say, hey, I need a service that will get me the next sequential identifier, because this projects will be able to create stories and planning items, right? And they'll have an ID that is unique across both of them. That doesn't really feel like a tenant management concern, right? So that expands that again. Ticketing needs to know about projects, but ticketing doesn't create a project ticket. Ticket creates a project, an item, and it is associated with a project, right? And yeah. So I need to consider what sequencing looks like, right? Where do I do that? What service do I build to achieve that, right? Because essentially what I need to do is then make a request and say, go and get me the next sequence. And something sits out here and says, okay, here's your next sequence. And then it updates it and says, yep, there you go. There's your next sequence. So yeah, this is this is a game of fun. Let's go fix those unit tests and the specification. So again, this now has an issue because now this is a GUID. Let's make sure that I'm being consistent, not just lazy. I need to make sure that is actually I need to make sure, again, consistency. Drop that once more. Okay. So again, I'm differentiating ID over identifier just so it's visually indicative. I'm trying to make sure that that is a pattern that I follow pretty consistently, so that I'm able to know that I intend it to be a GUID versus it's accidentally an int, right? What this will allow me to do is do that, and again the prefix is going to be calculated on the client. It's not it really wants to name that CT. But that should validate that now. We should be able to create a tenant, create a project. And again, because there's no need for that internal ID to be used, it's fine. So I am starting to try and build this backlog, right? And It's going to grow quickly now. So I need to keep track of these are the items that I'm building out. We need another item. When a project is added, an integration event should be published. That is the Kafka component, wiring Kafka up and publishing an integration event for the project being added. That will allow me to notify the other components of the system, hey, this project exists, by the way, right? So ticketing, planning, stories can all store. Stories doesn't exist yet, right? But they can all store their own version of project. Again, sequencing is going to be challenging, right? Yeah. Because planning and stories aren't the owner of sequence. Tenant management doesn't seem like the owner of sequence. That doesn't seem like a logical. It is the owner of project. But we'll come back around to that later. Because that will pose its own set of challenges for certain. So now this needs to be GUID. New GUID. That needs to be a GUID. That needs to be an identifier. That fixes that one. Okay. Let's make sure they run. So, if you're new to the stream, if you're joining for the first time, right, you're more than welcome to ask questions. You're more than welcome to engage on discussion about what I'm doing. I'm more than happy to talk about it and demonstrate it. It's a little bit intimidating because there's a lot of code, there's a lot of pieces moving, but I am working on an Agile project management platform, and I'm streaming it because it is sharing, larger project software development being built from the ground up. So I'm streaming it for the purpose of sharing the discussion, sharing the thoughts, sharing challenges like I've just identified, right? There's like things start to expand the more features I add, and the needs of the system grow. I mean, that's defining projects, right? That is just one component of that part. Where are you? Why can't I create a new issue? As a the user, I should see a unique So this is one of those instances where I won't have that identifier. I might not have that identifier necessarily immediately, right? When I create the planning item, I pass back the identifier to the client to say, hey, you've created this item. Is there more things are going to happen, right? Getting that next sequence could be part of that, right? Attaching the project reference to it, maybe a disconnected step, but I'll have to think about that when I come to that design. But I want to make note of the actual thing because again, it's something that needs to be done. And what you can see here is like just the cost of I'm adding all this information, all this stuff in here, but this is starting to create a backlog that is going to get messier, right? Profits, hello, happy Friday. How are things? After it should be attached a unique project reference. So that is going to have to, we're going to have to figure that out, right? Because it's yeah. And again, as a user, when I create a new, I think I should be able to assign a project. I'm creating a new project, a new planning item. Required to assign a project to the Hi Shai, how you doing? So, this starts to really expand the amount of work that I've got to do just to get basic things in there, right? So, again, the goal, the goal will be very much to be, being able to go in here, add a new item, assign a project. Oh no. Well, I hope you feel better. Good, good. Get a lot better sleep. That's good to hear. So yeah, when you assign a new planning item, being able to assign the project to it, and then that project. Oh dear. So we should, in just 11 small files, be able to run this up. No. Okay, that'll healthier. So by the time I start to expand the system even further, this is going to get the number of projects. I'm running 9 projects now, so I run 8 projects here, and then I run the Angular piece here, so 9 projects fully, just to do what I'm doing right now. Halfway to paying off my car. Nice. Nice. My dogs are going crazy for some reason. Always good when you make progress on something that big. Keen eye for good financial decisions. Not me. Okay, so we should be able to go here. Go to planning. Here we go. We should be able to refresh that, get the token. And we go here. You're immortalized in my test data, by the way, defaults. Not new planning items. So we need tenant management. New folder. You were the last one that stuck. I was one day I was going through a load of different users, and I was basically going through Cito's stream and just so there was like Shy and Cubics and you and Thorolf and all sorts, and you're just the one that stuck around. Whoa. This is going to drive me crazy. Hello, Raiders. Hello, thank you. Nikki, how are you doing? How are things? I wish that was a thing on my stream. I do not have anything fun to play with, unfortunately. Doing good. Doing good. Adding features. You've joined at a point where I actually can demonstrate something of what I'm doing. So welcome all. I am not a game dev, unfortunately. I am an app dev. I would love to be a game dev. My name kind of puts it there. My name comes from I love game collecting. So I have a large collection of retro games. But anyway, what I'm working on right now is an Agile project management platform. And over the years, I've developed a lot of software. I've worked with a lot of different tools, a lot of different systems, a lot of different teams. And, you know, I feel that there's some things that can be smoothed out. So I'm building my own. Right or wrong, good or bad, I am building my own, and I aim to make it an actual product. So what I'm working on right now is this concept of planning items, and I can add a new planning item. I can attach requirements to planning items, right? And I'm able to start building this out. And what I'm currently working on, the system as a whole, is quite large right now. What I'm adding right now is the ability to kind of group things by a project. So I've been working on adding the backend components for defining a project. The idea being that I'll be able to go in here, and when I say new item, I'll be able to attach a project ID and a project rather, and it will assign a unique reference. If you've used any software similar, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. The goal of the project is right now is to basically get this planning items functionality in. And a lot of this revolves around some concepts such as I have this concept of a review date. So no item can be added to the system without having a review date set. And that review date, when it comes up, it will warn you and notify others. Because there's a lot of work we do where we are being chased for information. We are being asked, where are we with this? Where are we with that? And I want to make a system that is a little bit more reactive and a little bit more friendly about telling people. My love of JetBrains tools never goes past you, does it? Defaults. So I can add a new planning item. This is a planning item. This does magical things. 04. There's no validation as yet. Right, I'm still building a lot of that stuff out. still working on controls, but so the idea is that that's now available down here. And the system as a whole is built in a very distributed manner, right? I have lots of moving parts. I am using, I don't like the term, these aren't microservices by any stretch of the imagination. This is mini monolith essentially. These are what I refer to as components of the system, right? So a component can have all its self-contained parts. It has its own storage. It has its own data, and it owns what it owns. I use Kafka for producing information around the system. So when something happens, it publishes integration events. Those integration events can be consumed by one or many other parts of the system. I'm using, right now, pretty much everything's SQL Server, but that will change over time to use different data storage technologies. And it's using mass transit and service bus to do some communication as well, where it's more point to point. Hey, this system, you need to do this. I keep having to keep myself from doing app dev. I love doing this. I love building software. It's something I take great pride in. I don't consider myself an amazing developer by any stretch of the imagination, but I consider myself passionate and I love learning and growing. And the best way to do that is to develop, right? You know, the streaming component of it is very much, I like to share this. This is the sort of stuff that people don't get to see all the time when they're building little apps, etc., or whatever. So there are a few people that develop larger scale apps on Twitch. Live Coding is one, and DevDad is developing another platform. They're more social media style projects. And Coppinger as well. But this scale of development, this sort of complication is something that is useful. It is a different way to develop applications, and I kind of love sharing this. So, so the downside to the design here is when I write something from the client, it goes through an API gateway, gets routed to the correct API, gets stored in that system under its own storage, right? But now I need to join all that back together because planning items are more than just some data in one data store. They're associated with a tenant. They have a user attached, etc. So when a planning item is added, it gets it gets created as an event and put into Kafka. Kafka is then, we have consumers attached to it. And in this instance, this consumer reads it into its own data store. And this is, I should make this clear. This is GraphQL. Right. So I have a GraphQL API sat in front of this data store. So this data is stored. And again, the benefit here is the write side of things can be quick. The read side of things can be optimized for indexes and querying, etc. So there's a lot of value here, but there's a lot of complexity in moving these parts around. And from the client side, it means that I can't just say, okay, well, I create this planning item, go and fetch it back, right? Because I don't make that query to the API that I saved it on. I make that query to the GraphQL endpoint. So I'm using GraphQL notifications, subscriptions rather, to kind of tell me, by the way, this got updated in the background, right? So you might want to refresh it. And ultimately, there'll be a refresh icon here to say, yep, I've got new information. If I had a requirement to this as well, sample requirement, should see a notification. When I create that, what you should see eventually is that'll change to 2, because then that's gone the full cycle as well, right? So the requirement gets added in, and then it gets published, and then it gets consumed, and then it notifies my client. So now I can say, oh, by the way, the requirements changed for this item, right? And this is just a simple demonstration of the notification stuff that I'm trying to build, because what I want to do is build an ability for the user, for any user in the system to say, hey, I care about this item, right? I only care about it if certain things change, and I want to be notified in this way if this changes, and this way if this changes. So if this planning item is promoted to a story later on, then like management might care, right? Because they want to know that this planning item is actually making progress through the system. So they might say, okay, well, when planning items get updated, digest that into a daily email. Whereas if the review date of an item expires on a specific item, they might want a pop-up notification and an email or whatever. So I'm trying to design out a system of notifications that is going to be very flexible, but also very customizable to try and cut down that noise so that notifications aren't just blast notifications, right? Because everything gets lost in the noise. Everyone ignores notifications, right? I was watching a video earlier on, and the guy had he brought up an Apple Play thing on his car, and he had 450 messages as a notification icon, right? There's just so much noise there. How do you know what's relevant anymore, right? So one of the things I'm trying to focus on is very much this building out a solid notification system that allows you to customize it to you. And the idea is that anybody can subscribe to these things, right? So, the management can subscribe to knowing when the item progresses or when the item's closed or when the work is finished or is moved, etc. They can get notifications to see where that is. So they don't have to bother a developer, right? From a developer perspective, you don't care, oh, where are we with this project identifier, this project that we were working on 6 months ago? Where is that? Well, the developer doesn't know, right? The developer might not be tracking that, right? So I want to get away from the developer and move it all back to the product team. And the developers should be able to use this tool eventually to just say, what work do I need to do? Work on it and do it and complete it and not have to worry about all the fluff around the edges, right? So I'm just checking something. So yeah, that is Liquid Sky is my code name for this project, my Agile project management platform, and it is something that I've spent the last 6 months working on this. There's a lot of moving parts, a lot of pieces. So we were just at the point where I was about to test a new feature, which is the projects. Elaborate and well thought out. Elaborate, absolutely. And I have reasoned with myself. I've had discussions with other people about the complexity and over complexity of this. I want to make this a real project, right? This is a product that I feel if I can build it well enough, that it will be something that is useful for all. And I think it is something that, could very well be a thing. So, with that in mind, I don't want to build it in the quickest possible way necessarily, because the quickest possible way is the way that doesn't scale and doesn't grow, right? And, you only have to have been a developer for a little while in any sort of product to know that any system that was built and has grown quickly or whatever, you're going to struggle with, right? So from the start, I want to build this in a way that is flexible enough that I can change parts out, I can replace pieces, I can condense pieces, I can expand pieces, etc. Scalability is kind of it's a kind of side effect of doing it this way, but it does make it a lot harder to manage overall. So 7194. Okay, so we're going to go here. I'm going to go to post. We need the bearer to. I need to set up some sort of variables in all this. So HTTPS localhost 7194 projects. Sorry. We're gonna create a body, and this needs a name. Thank you. I have been suffering with sickness of some form for over a month. It's driving me crazy, but yeah, at least I can talk mainly. New project, and the prefix is going to be NP. Right. So, oh no, we don't have everything. We do not have everything. I need to stop something. We need to do some wire up here, otherwise I'm going to have an issue. So we need to do configure validator, iValidator, create project, dot command, create project, dot validator. We need that piece wired up. Look, meeting, have a great rest of your stream. I'll probably end by the time until. Yeah. Thank you very much, OneLine. I will see you later. If you are not aware, OneLine is also a streamer, also does application development, and I apologize for not mentioning you in that other group before. OneLine is currently working on a financial management platform. I love the word platform. Financial management project, and it's kind of a rebuild, and but he's focusing very much on like the aesthetics and the feel, because he's developed the software already. He's working on the design and stuff, so doing a lot of work in Figma. My Figma skills are sorely lacking. But OneLine is an awesome streamer, and it's a really great place to hang out on his stream. He also has fun games and stuff, whereas I don't have fun games. You can play archery on his stream. So, my sincere apologies for dropping the ball on calling out OneLine earlier on with application development. Also .NET. So, like, the other one that's doing .NET, the others are not doing .NET stuff. Yeah. Well, his stream overlaps with Sato's as well normally on Monday and Wednesdays. Okay, so we got the validation in there. I don't think I need anything else. I think we're good there. So let's start that up again. We'll give this a test and see. Again, the benefit, the reason I write the unit tests and write the code the way I do is because I want to just be able to, and mostly it does work that way, where I don't have to do much tinkering once I get to this phase. But nothing's perfect. Projects post line 19. Okay, it wasn't even the new code that went wrong. It was the old code. User is authenticated. What? Tenant identifier. User identifier. Hold on, my user email was no. Is that the first time I've used that method? Whoops. Dang it. Sadly, I don't have time for dealing with this. I think this failed. So I set that up before because I oftentimes get the user identifier and get the tenant identifier. And I decided, well, why not wrap it up into user profile? And then I have it. And then I probably have it because when it's on the API side, I do that sort of stuff where I'm like, okay, well, it's yeah, it's not first to default. So this is coming out null. So claims. I have a role. Oh, I don't have the email. Well, there's your problem. Because it's not in the access token. This is the access token, not the ID token. This is the one that I care about. So, yeah, that's just. So what we do there is we just stop tenant management. We can leave the rest of the system running. We don't have to shut down everything. So that, I just don't need to do that. I just need to do user get tenant identifier. I'm going to be drinking a little healthier today, partly because I feel so bad. I'm going to store to get yogurt drinks. Nice. I like yogurt drinks. Hi, Junigus. No, I created a method to try and wrap up getting user identifier and stuff, and yeah, it went wrong on me. Merlin, how are you doing? Hello. Okay, one more try, and then we'll talk about what's next. Okay, so let's try that once more. So we should be able to go there. The entity type project requires a primary key to be defined if you intended to use a key. What? What do you mean the entity type requires a primary? What do you think the ID column is? How the yoga drinks help a bit with getting hydrated more. Well, water. You should drink plenty of water in a day. Not important how I'm doing. I'm in a constant state of being brain fried. Fried? How you doing? I'm okay. My voice is a little bit worse for wear today, but yeah. Oh, today got woken up by a hysterical boss. One of the stores was down and was wondering if something I did about 2 weeks ago was the cause. Yeah. You're the guy. That's why you should always make sure there is at least one other person who will be working that knows everything you do. Share all your knowledge. Do not hold on to it. Silos are bad. And if you're forced to silo, get rid. I love how you went through all that effort, Defaults, to find out one flavour of yogurt drink that Shy may or may not have in that. Yeah. Raspberry is I suppose a pink version of strawberry. That's a good way of putting it. So this failed. I need to finish up. I can't play around with this. So why did that fail? That failed because sorry, my bad. Why do I not have a key field? Project. Oh, yeah. I know what I'm doing. Honestly, I'm a professional. I don't copy and paste anything. My apologies. Oh, that looks healthier, doesn't it? Isn't it amazing? If I'd have actually typed that out, that would have worked fine. TBD's been coughing for now almost 5 weeks. This is getting irritating fast. And I apologize because I know it will be equally as irritating if that cough comes across on the stream. Oh, I didn't realize that was running. My apologies. And I know it's just it's not my lungs or anything because last night I chose to do a black belt karate class and then immediately after do a kickboxing class, and I had no issues. Well, no issues doing them. Yeah, you won't be used to me talking in a normal way without a cough. Yeah, it'll be the norm for the stream. I apologize for that. Okay, so we do have a project. So now, if I try that again, it should error. Validation failed. Project prefix already exists. So obviously that's not the ideal way of doing this, but that is actually the validator throwing an exception. So that's something that I'll have to look at a global level in terms of, okay, what do I do when an exception actually occurs, right? Should that, like, that should not return a 500 internal server. That should handle that out. It is a handleable error. But that is, right now, that is applied as a layer in front of the request, right? So when I go here, all you see is create project, right? And you see it handle this command. So it looks like it does that. But in reality, it actually goes to the validator and runs this validation as part of that pipeline. So it will run this before it even passes the command in. So I can't have two because it's actually throwing an exception because the project already exists by prefix for that tenant, right? So that's working fine. So we have some progress. That is good. This project's arc is going to take several days at least of work. Hopefully I get some time this weekend to actually sit down and work on this and get some more progress made, because that will be a that will feel like an achievement for certain. So, you know, there's lots more to come. There's lots more pieces here. You know, the next piece is to actually, my team lead just told me he has been told he can no longer task people. What? Task is in assign work. Team lead can no longer assign work. What? Okay. That's an interesting management choice. Assign someone to lead a team and then don't give them the ability to actually assign work. So who assigns work then? So while I'm waiting for defaults there. Supervisor. Sounds like a company that doesn't know how to figure out how to use people effectively. So making progress on this. Obviously, this is good, a good first step. The next piece will actually be to use the Kafka components, right? So the next piece will actually be to publish the project, because to get this is going to be a challenge, right? To get the project visible as a drop down to select it, right? It's going to have to go into GraphQL. So to do that, I'm going to have to publish an integration event that says the project has been created. And we'll go through that next stream. Well, actually, maybe I'll go through that off stream. But again, if anyone has any questions, has any thoughts, opinions on what I'm doing, you're more than welcome to share. You're more than welcome to ask questions. I'm always happy to talk about this stuff. There is a Discord if you want to take things offline and dig deeper. This project is not open source, but it is something that I do love talking about and do love, and I'm happy to demonstrate certain components. Full disclaimer, Discord is online. Because I said offline. Off stream. Pedantic. Off stream. You know what I mean. It's the closest thing we're going to get to offline in a digital world anymore. So you know what I mean. Anyway, so the next piece was to get this to publish through. The GraphQL will pick it up, and then I'll be able to select it as a project. So that again, there'll be that piece, and again, from a work perspective, I could flow all the way through these pieces and just kind of make them work. But I want to make sure that I'm breaking the work into meaningful chunks. I'm committing often. I'm building them, and it's working that way. So yeah, that is the goal. That is what's coming next. On Monday, we resume Water Drink Water. So if you're new, on Mondays and Tuesdays, I work on a project called Water Drink Water. It is an open source project. It is available on my GitHub friends, and it is a Blazor project, which you need to attend, defaults, because it's got some bugs and it was driving one lion crazy last stream, trying to figure out why I couldn't do what I needed to do. So you need to attend and fix it for me and educate me on why I don't want to give up 7 a.m. as always. Next Friday will be a longer stream because I do have the day off work next Friday, which will be good for getting this done. So I will, are you crazy? Absolutely. So, ooh, I know who we're rating. So, yeah, Water Drink Water Monday. We'll get more progress made on that. We'll get more progress made on this over the weekend. I may actually check out Fallout because it actually got some pretty good reviews from what I saw. So that might be something I check out. But I will. I may stream over the weekend, but that will be random. Yeah, 1 p.m. for you. It's nice lunchtime for you. So, yeah. But yeah, that'll be me. I gotta go get some breakfast. I gotta get work. I'm behind on time. We're gonna go raid Frank. Frank Bashir is really nice guy, really good streamer. Does a lot with Azure, so cloud development is his thing. So I recommend checking him out. And thank you very much for joining me. Take care. I will see you again soon. Bye all.